Hi, everyone. This is Steve Dellasan, and welcome to this week's edition of CEOs You Should Know. I am thrilled to be joined by Alvin Zhang, the co-founder, CFO, and CMO of Teapulse. Alvin, thanks for being here today.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're excited to jump in to learn more about you and more about Teapulse. So why don't we kick it off? I know you built your career as a managing director, advising organizations on finance transformations, operational improvements, and more, all while co-founding Teapulse. What inspired you from making that move from advising businesses to creating one of your own?
Well, first of all, I did not leave one path for another, right?
Okay.
So I think throughout my consulting career, I had the opportunity to advise companies on transformation, on growth, on operational improvement. But, I was just, always curious about what it's like if I'm on the other side of the
Yeah.
table, right? So, my brother-in-law, Ye, we just had this opportunity and to create something.
Sure.
And yeah, that's what's been really inspiring me because, I guess I haven't really created something of my own, even though I advise, clients a lot of different things. I'm always curious and inspired about creating the brand, right? And listening directly to customers, analyzing data, which I do a lot, but in this case, my own data, right? So that's my inspiration.
That's awesome. And I know that you founded it together with your brother-in-law, Yate, who had a long entrepreneurial track record, right? What inspired the two of you to come up with the idea around Teapulse, and how did your different backgrounds and experiences help balance each other out and shape what the company is?
Yeah, we sometimes we tell everybody it's a family business. That family, being a family, give us the foundation
Sure.
of trusts, right? So, but
Which
also
is very important.
very important,
Yep.
when it comes to business partnership. But then, Yid and I really bring very different skill sets and strengths to the table. For me, like I said, it's more consulting. I'm, a strategist, if you will, or advisor.
Sure.
I think about scalability. For Ye, he's a serial entrepreneur. He started his first business when he was 18.
Wow.
Yeah, straight out of, not even out of college.
Yeah.
In college, he built, operated businesses like liquor stores, bakeries, restaurants, both
Very cool.
quick service and the sit-down restaurants. He's very hands-on. And he has this, instinct as a serial entrepreneur, started so young when it comes to like location or
Yep.
when it comes to some decision, not necessarily, you don't necessarily have all the data or, tested the market yet. He just has that instinct, right? So I'm like the other force that's
Yep.
pulling him back, says, you know what, let's take a look at the market trends. Let's maybe analyze the ROI. Let's, we got to have a process, a system in place. So yeah, very different skill sets, but it's like it complement each
Yeah.
other really well.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I know you mentioned that you've been doing consulting and advisoring for a while, and then obviously now in a leadership role around entrepreneur and running your own business. What are some of the lessons you learned early on in your career that you were able to learn for and still implement in your leadership style now?
Yeah. So, well, a lot of things, but I think the biggest lesson learned is, retention. Retention taught us much more than acquisition. In my consulting career, I built a lot of decks, obviously.
Yeah.
Do a lot of analytics, beautiful PowerPoint, all that. But customer don't see that,
Yeah.
right? If you're talking about a T-Post, store, customers see your product,
Mm-hmm.
how friendly your staff are, how clean your store is. It's just, the lesson learned, I guess, it's easier to have a strategy on paper, but it's a hard work to really implement. It's really the day-to-day. The devils are in the details, right? So, we want the customer, the first try, to come from curiosity.
Yep.
Right? But then the second try, the third try, you got to earn that. So yeah, that's something I learned throughout, my kind of, in the both of the worlds.
Absolutely.
And that's definitely the mentality to be if you wanted to create something on your own. Yeah.
Very cool. When we first mentioned you, obviously you're the co-founder, you're the CMO, you're the CFO. How do you balance it all? How do you have that creativity as a CMO to obviously balancing the spreadsheets as a CFO on the data side? Like, How do you handle all of that at once?
Yeah, great question. So sometimes people would think, CFO and the CMO are kind of like opposing forces,
Sure.
right? One is more about creativity, the other one is discipline. But it's a yin and yang, right?
Yeah.
It actually comes together really well for me. I'm enjoying it so far. I wasn't a marketing or PR person or even communication by trade. I learned a lot of my, on the CMO side, I learned a lot of things on the job. But sometimes I tell Grace, it's like arm wrestling with myself, right? Like I come up with this, idea.
Yeah.
It's a collaboration or it's a new product, like Grace and I are thinking, or it's a campaign. We think it's gonna go viral. But then on the right hand side, I really have to then think about the ROI, the spending.
What is this gonna get? Yeah.
The supply chain actually support this, right? Can we even get those products sourced, right, within the amount of time we're under to actually do it? So a lot of these things. So yeah, it's a dilemma. It's very interesting, but they actually come together really well.
That's awesome.
So I highly recommend, especially for founders in the beginning, everybody wear multiple hats, right?
You get to learn all the different pieces of the business.
Yeah, CFO and the CMO, believe it or not, are actually a good combo. I highly recommend for other founders out there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Teapulse. I know Teapulse, it reimagines familiar products of tea, coffee, lemonade, and pastries through a modern lens, right? So how do you foster that culture of innovation while ensuring that the brand still remains authentic to its roots?
Tea is the foundation of our brand. It's also our roots. I'm an immigrant myself. I came to this country when I was 18. So we always wanted to, respect the roots while giving it a different twist, a modern New York City energy.
Yep.
What that means is, that's innovation, right? But what that means is we, for example, blend the tea into lemonade. So we create lemon tea, right? We also, create baked pastries as well, pastel de nata or egg tart, Portuguese style egg tarts, So it's really to give it a different lens, right? Typically, you think about tea houses, tea houses tucked away in Chinatown. We wanted to create more accessibility, convenience, and also make it fun. So yeah, innovation, but also sticking to our roots. I think authenticity is extremely important. Yeah.
And I know that the brand itself is more than a tea brand, right? It's a lifestyle brand. It's centered around, as you just mentioned, obviously culture, creativity, and connection. What does that vision look like moving forward? What's the vision for the next year, 5 years ahead?
Next 5 year. Oh, yeah. We have a lot in our mind. We wanted to make Teapulse not just a beverage or tea brand. We wanted to be more of a feeling and an experience, right? So it's a lifestyle brand, exactly like you said. But that, by the way, that sounds very marketing-ish. In reality, in practice, we wanted to expand. We wanted to expand geographically.
Awesome.
We wanted to collaborate with artists, also local communities. We wanted to continue to introduce innovative products, So again, tea is a foundation, but how to give it a modern twist. One day if we expand beyond New York City, we also wanted to really stick to the city. I think New York is a part of our identity, right?
Yeah.
We wanted to stick to the identity and where everything started. So that's kind of our vision for the next 5 years. But there's a lot of, again, devils are in the details. But yeah, expansion, collaboration,
very cool.
Innovation. Yeah.
Well, let's stick to New York because we just talked about it, right?
Yeah.
So I know that we just mentioned before we even jumped on that there's a location really close by. Yeah. And I know one thing that you did is you kind of transformed what people think of as a tea house to now this more innovative destination that they could visit while staying authentic to New York is. What was the strategy behind that, and what should someone expect if they decide to visit a location?
Well, we wanted to be part of the city. The city is very vibrant, New York City. If there's one place to do what I just said, it's got to be New York City, right? So we intentionally picked our locations throughout the city. This is Central Park. We have a location, K-Town, Madison Square Park, Chinatown. More coming, by the way. But we wanted to be part of New Yorkers' daily rhythm. If you think about tea, coffee, pastry, that's really it. Tea, coffee, pastry, reimagined. That's kind of our tagline. But we wanted to create a energy system. The tea is the focus energy, or the calm energy. Coffee is more the focus energy,
Sure.
and then pastry is like the warmth, little moments of joy, energy. So it really matches New Yorker throughout the day, right? In the morning, you grab a coffee, and then you probably come for another drink. In this case, could very well be a lemon tea.
Yep.
After lunch, right? And then throughout the day, hey, you grab a snack. New Yorkers are always on the go. So, hey, a pastel de nata, or even other product we're going to introduce in the future. So we want it to be part of New Yorkers' life, right? That's our vision, and that's how we want everybody to perceive Teapulse beyond just a boba tea brand. Yeah,
love it. I know we talked to culture is one of the pillars of the organization, right? I know when you look at the menu, there's everything from Eastern to Western influences, from the lemonades to some of the pastries that are on the menu. How important was that cultural storytelling, incorporating the menu as part of Teapulse's strategy?
It's extremely important. For Yed and I, we both came to this country as an immigrant. We always wanted to be the bridge between cultures. So when it comes to our product, the two great examples you just mentioned, Steve, for example, the pastel de nata, Portuguese nectar. Obviously it's a Portuguese pastry, right? But then I believe it or not, everybody in Asia loves that because of Macau's influence, right? Like I just remember when I was young, when I was still in my hometown, we always have pastel de nata or egg tarts. So that's kind of a bridge between East and West, right? And the lemon tea as well. The foundation is lemonade. That's probably the most approachable beverage here, right? Like think about everybody sold lemonade when at school, but then we add tea to it. We add tea to it, which gives it the complexity and depth. So it's another East and the West kind of. Yeah. So every product, including future innovation too, we always intentionally wanted to be that bridge between East and the West, because that's our life experience. Yeah. So it's also our identity.
100%.
Yeah.
And perfect for New York, cultural melting pot.
Yeah,
right?
If there's any place to do it, it's New York City.
Yeah, speaking of New York, I know that New York, obviously, for the food and beverage industry, could be very competitive. Lots of coffee shops and probably competition. What has been one of the most challenging aspects of launching Teapulse in New York, and how have you been able to overcome that?
Yeah, New York is extremely competitive. The rent is going
just
through
a little bit, right?
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, but I think the biggest challenge is actually not opening the store. There's a lot of things opening store, but we opened a lot of store in the past, even prior to Teapulse. It's a lot of hustle, but the real challenge is to run the stores, because it's just every store has its own pattern, the traffic, the demographic, the neighborhood, the vibe. It's very different. The rent is different, but then when customer come into your store, they're expecting consistent quality of the same product, right? So running it is the real challenge, and it comes down to people, process, technology, right? But number one is always people. So we spend a lot of time. It's all about the talents. So running the store is the biggest challenge. Devils are in the details.
Yeah, definitely.
Seriously.
I could only imagine.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears a little bit back to you. So obviously, currently invested in Teapulse, co-founder of it. Your background is you've helped consult and advise other founders. What is one of the biggest mistakes you notice entrepreneurs and founders making, and how can they improve on that?
Yeah, I guess throughout my consulting career, or my own career as a entrepreneur as well, one of the, I guess, common mistakes I saw was to grow or scale too early, before your operation model is ready, right? Like meaning in Teapulse's case, if we jump on, the franchising raw or scaling too quickly without a training system, without SOPs, without, a good system around us to
Yep.
build the stores, the architect, the contractor, all of that resources. It's not going to go well. And I've seen that over and over again. This country, one thing about this country is if you scale too quickly, not careful, next thing you know, one lawsuit, your entire 5 years of effort is just gone, right?
Yep.
So yeah. So that's the most common mistake. Another one I want to share, is just, I think some founders or people, or myself included, sometimes confuse the initial success or initial market reaction with long-term success, right? Because, like I said, the first try, you can earn that through social media.
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
earn that through collaborations or just plain curiosity about this new store around the corner.
Yep.
But then the consistency, the second try, the third try, that's
Those
what tells the
customers.
founder
Yeah.
you were truly accepted by the market or not, right? So
Yep.
sometimes people are confused by the first try. Oh my God, this is definitely, but it's I've seen that over and over again as well. So I would say those are the two
good
common
nuggets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of advice, for any entrepreneurs that are tuning in or people that are thinking about starting their own business, what advice would you wish you could give yourself years ago when you were first getting into the industry?
Start with your passion. That's the most important thing in the beginning. But then, passion does not equal to operating model, right? From there, you really have to think through your operating model, your business, how does it work, your margin, your operating cost, your labor, your product matrix, all of that. But then, I guess my suggestion is you always have to find a balance. You can't have, like me, myself included, I've advised, large company as large as public companies, but as a startup, you cannot let, that become to restrain or constrain
Sure.
your creativity. So there's always, don't let Excel or spreadsheet eliminate your creativity, right? So hold that balance, especially as a startup. But then lastly comes down to execution again, So it's always about execution. The same exact strategy can be carried out very differently when different people carry them out. So yeah, but start with your passion. That's the most important thing if you
100%.
wanted to start your own business.
You have to love what you do, especially the business that you're creating.
It gives you that unlimited motivation. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we covered a lot. If there was one thing that you want our listeners to know about the mission of Teapulse, what would that be?
We are a lifestyle brand. We wanted to, so tea, coffee, pastry, that's our product, but reimagined.
Okay.
We wanted to be that cultural bridge between East and the West. And then we wanted to be an authentic brand that eventually will expand, but stick to our roots.
Love that.
Yeah.
If someone is tuning in and they want to learn more about Teapulse, what should they do?
Give us a shot. We currently have 9 locations.
Amazing.
3 in Queens, 6 right here in the city, in Manhattan. So, if you see one, give us a shot. I mean, our signature product is lemon tea, which is perfect for this weather,
Yeah.
Give us a shot and then, interact with us on social media. Give us a shout out. If there's any suggestion, also let me know. Or co-founders were extremely hands-on.
Love that.
Believe it or not, it's probably going to be me replying to your comments. So yeah, that's my call to action.
Amazing. Well, I'm looking forward to checking it out and trying it firsthand. But Alvin, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you taking us through your journey and, of course, learning more about Teapulse.
Thank you, Steve. It was great to be here.
Absolutely. And thank you all for tuning in. Tune in next week for next week's edition of CEOs You Should Know.